appreciated. Yes, the last 4-5 days I've been here attending various fund and bank related meetings. It's also been an occasion where I've interacted with a lot of Indian business leaders who had come as part of a larger delegation. The US IBC also held a meeting with all their industry capitals, speaking about what their expectations are, at least in this round of the government. And I've taken their inputs. They've also been interacting with us in India itself. Besides that, we also have the forthcoming visit of the Treasury Secretary, Munochan, in probably end of this month, end of November, early December, I think. So there is a reason why the US establishment also wants to engage in connection with the Secretary's visit and also in connection with an expectation which is on both sides that the trade agreement should be concluded at the earliest. I know the discussions on the agreement are going very well, and we hope we sign the agreement at the earliest. These are the larger sketches of what happened in the last 4-5 days. Just today I'm here and I leave tomorrow. From the end of this month, the pre-budgetary consultations will start for that complete budget that this government will create. Although this year we did have a budget given in July, it was only a continuation of what was presented as an interim budget once in February. So, you know, the attempts are to keep going with the structural reforms, which has been an ongoing mission, but because of the limitation in the House, in the upper house particularly, we could not get many of the critical bills passed during the last year. However, towards the last year, we were able to mobilize that support in Rajya Sabha also, and so we set the pace for clearing through the upper house also, even in the last year. But this time, I'm very hopeful that many of the reformatory steps will pass through with a bit more of ease, and for which the government is committed. As an opening remark, I'll say this much and leave it for you all to. I understand an interaction is planned. I'm okay with answering questions. So thanks again for coming today.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your opening remarks. And I'll be very, as Honorable Minister has agreed, we can take some comments, brief comments and questions for Minister to respond. And
Honorable Minister, we welcome you on behalf of the Indian Committee in Chicago. In India's quest for $5 trillion economy, what framework, what measures are you planning to undertake to reach that objective?
We'll take 2 or 3 questions, ma'am, then we can perhaps request Honorable Minister to respond. Yes, please.
Hello. I had the privilege of meeting you in Delhi, and you are the Commerce Minister. And I must say some of the pilot initiatives that you have taken, especially for the ports and airports, is really going well. All I think I should suggest is if you can implement it through all the airports, then I think the ease of doing business will really go up a few notches for India. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Shobha, and then Mr. Bala.
Thank you, and please accept our congratulations for a fantastic governance and making India proud for us in the US, first of all, and welcome. And I would like to ask, how can India, I've talked about it to our wonderful consultant here, the Leela Ji too. With the tariff going on between US and China, how can India divert it or really make use of the opportunity to grow? And what is being said is there should be a one-stop shop, so one person of contact. That's what Vietnam and Thailand are doing. How can we create that opportunity for India so people have a lack of all the other thorns on the way and get the work done, because we want both countries to grow. So, and also anything for women empowerment, I'm sure you'll do, but that would be awesome to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shobha. Mr. Bala.
Honorable Finance Minister, thank you for coming here. I'm founder CEO of a company called Visualite Innovations, working in the digital space. Digital and startups, as you're aware, is going to be the engine of growth and job creation. Significant opportunities there, and I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Krishnamurthy Subramaniam when he was here about the opportunities in the areas of 5G, fintech, IoT, and so on and so forth. Each of these represent billions of dollars, and we need to grab a slice of that action. My question specifically is, and I applaud you for some of the initiatives that you've taken specifically with respect to startups with regards to angel tax. There's recently one on MSMEs where the overdue payments should be cleared within a certain period of time. A lot of the execution happens at the state level. So while you have jurisdiction over the central government, how do you ensure that, and particularly as I represent the large consortium startups, the issues happen with the state governments not fulfilling or adhering to some of those paid startups, vendors, and so on and so forth? How do you ensure coordination with state governments to ensure that they fulfill their commitment and make the execution happen on the ground in their respective states? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Prabhakar, Vijay Prabhakar.
Good afternoon, ma'am. We welcome you on behalf of the Tamil community. Vanakkam. And briefly met you with Jayalalitha ji during Global Entrepreneurs Meet in Chennai. We are highly impressed with your, like Shobha ji said, about how you're carrying forward the agenda of our Prime Minister Modi. We'd like you to just give us a few points on how Article 370 being revoked is so beneficial for the country, and if at all it affected the financial markets. Thank you so much and welcome again.
Dr. Bala, yeah.
This is Bala Balasan from Kellogg School and Great Lakes. I think the main thing you did, a very bold and a brave movement of this 15% tax rate for startups. Like that, you can have a huge reach if you also look at the villages and the microfinance. In the midst of about 27 villages, we have created the business school and microfinance, as well as using the technology to every village to have a small bank with one person who understands. As an experiment, we have done that. I think that is what is important, where 65% of the population will get a benefit. I would like to offer my services with my model. And in that, I would like to give this to you as a school and what we are doing here in Karma Yoga village.
Thank you, Dr. Vajan. Yeah, Neeraj Patel, and then Dr. Ajit Pant.
Namaste, Honorable Minister. My question is, India has introduced the rupee card. Now they are almost in competition with the MasterCard, Visa card, and other card processor. Majority card processors are Visa, MasterCard. They are also applied in India, and those one chunk of 1% is going out of country. So, is there any future plan to introduce the RuPay card in outside of India, as well as India? It is doing very well, but outside of India, so it can be accepted, because all the Indians, when they go outside, they are also using either MasterCard or Visa card, and that 1% is always without doing anything going out of the country. So, is there any promotion or some steps finance department to take on that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Patel. Mr. Pant, and I will maybe stop and then take questions in the second round. Mr. Ajit Pant.
Good afternoon, Mr. Madam. First of all, I want to compliment you and thank you for coming to Chicago and taking the time off to visit with us. I also want to compliment you as in your previous assignment as Defense Minister. You made a very spirited defense for the Rafale deal, and that has successfully concluded into aircraft coming. So that is, I think, a very big feather on your cap, and we compliment you for that. In regard to the finance portfolio, there are some observations that one would like to make. One is in regard to how, we've seen the economy kind of stumble a little bit. Many reforms have been announced in the recent past, but still one of the major problems, there are two or three problems. One is demand. How are you planning to increase the demand in the public? Second is in regard to banking. We have problems.
How will she remember so many questions?
The NPAs in the formal banking sector, and then we have now very serious problems in the non-banking sector also. So, I mean, I think something is not right. Sometimes the quality of assets, that assessment has to be sort of somewhat improved in the banking system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pant. Ma'am, would you like to respond at this stage? We'll take second round of questions after Madam's intervention.
I'll probably answer not specific to the question, but as I answer, I suppose many of them will get covered. See, as regards the trade tensions between China and India, and in the last, let's say, 6-8 months, there has been definitely a conscious effort to understand if where, because of the trade tensions, certain products which would have been otherwise sold or bought off from the US by China, are we able to enter into those markets? They were largely agricultural goods, whether it's sugar, rice or soya and things like that. The other fallout is of the number of industries which may now want to relocate from China. And in that, I think I'd like to calibrate it by saying many of the companies which want to relocate may still continue doing business in China itself because they have a large domestic market as much as we have, or even bigger. So for those who are coming out, they're coming out because they also want to capture or retain the market which they have based on those production units which are in China, within the region, accessible from the region, and so on. So our attempt is definitely going to have to be to draw those industries which want to get out of China to continue with their ecosystem and keep producing for markets elsewhere. For us, the big advantage is, as China gave them, we also can give a big domestic market, and both serving our own domestic market, they can also produce to export from India. So one of the driving forces behind the decision on reduction in corporate tax was to make India, from the tax point of view, an attractive destination for companies which would want to come and start a business. And that is why the decision also has 2 or 3 different aspects to it. One, the simple reduction itself of the rate, not just a notch down, but a considerable drop from where it is. And also there dividing it between those who exist already and those who will start from, let us say, October 1st this year. So that was a decision which the Prime Minister did not even wait for the next budget to come. He said, go ahead doing it, because we have to send a very clear signal. And if that is the decision to bring the rate down, the rate came down, but also very clearly simplified the process by saying the tax itself is what you have to keep in your business calculation. There are no more exemptions or anything added to it. So you're not complicating the compliance situation, except for saying this is the total amount of tax, and that ends the story. So it was reformatory as much as it is reduction in the rate cut, the corporate rate itself. So the idea was to make India an attractive destination for those companies which would come out of China to set up business, along with the last 5 years drive on ease of doing business. So if we are taking steps towards getting Chinese or companies which are coming out of China, this is one of the major steps that we took. Whether India benefits from it or not, I think the situation has created itself in such a way that it gives us an opportunity, and therefore we want to exploit that opportunity to benefit India. Steps towards 5 trillion economy, making India a better manufacturing destination, your tax structures being more favorable, making it even more attractive for people who would want to come afresh to start a business, making sure that manufacturing gets enough priority even within public sector lending, and manufacturing not just for manufacturing for supply in India but also export from India, giving agriculture the value-added dimension of bringing agri-processing, encouraging dairy. Didn't all this happen earlier? Yes, they happened somewhat in a different environment. Now our farmers are already showing clear capacity scaling up, which has never happened before. So if I were to take one example, Kutch, which was completely dry, saline in its soil, today has become one of the biggest horticultural exporter from India. With just that little water supply of Sabarmati going during the tenure of Prime Minister as Chief Minister, the entire landscape of Kutch has changed. Similarly, there are other parts of India which are themselves becoming today large agri-exporters. So we have now enough reasons to believe that while agriculture with the value additions, farmers' income doubling, and giving them insurance cover for any natural disaster-driven losses which might happen at any stage, you're protecting the farmer and the farmer's interest so that he is not down because of one yield going down the drain for the next 3-4 years, but immediately he can resurrect himself and so on. So it will be a combination of pushing agriculture with value addition, making manufacturing in India a far more better and attractive thing, and the service sector has really shown itself off very well on its own, having reached nearly 45% of our GDP. So service sector, together with other additional service areas like tourism and other things, will be our route towards reaching $5 trillion economy. About empowering women, I think even in this budget, although it was post and interim, I think we had made sure that women entrepreneurs will be given priority for the self-help groups which exist in rural areas. At least every group will have one woman being given that extra additional capital that she might require, and also extension in the working capital requirement. We've just made one first step. We also want to invigorate the gender budgeting units which exist in nearly 15 ministries, just so we know what these units are doing. Are they really assessing from the point of view of optimal utilization of resources for allocated purposes for man and women equally? So on the gender related matters, I think there's a clear consciousness. That is why the Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao has made an impact on gender ratio in many of the hard-pressed districts and states. Also giving women the cooking gas cylinder has made a very big impact on their health. There are reports now which are coming from international health organizations, the WHO in particular, about how that has changed the rural fitness and wellness, and that itself is a big message in empowering women. They don't have to spend time collecting fuel. Now, the other measure through which household chores can come down is through the Nal Se Jal scheme, which Prime Minister has taken up in this tenure of his, to make it in such a mission mode that every house, irrespective of wherever they are located, should have access to free flowing water. Microfinance is already actually doing in a very big way in every part of the country. The necessity for a brick and mortar bank branch in a village has actually been bypassed by the fact that a post office which exists in most of these places are already being given the additional responsibility of also serving as payment banks. There are MFIs everywhere, microfinance institutions everywhere. Small lending banks have also been given place in the scheme of things. Today, NBFCs have got absolutely extensive reach all over the country. So when somebody did talk about banking crisis, I've reviewed it in the last 3 months more than 3-4 times. Whether it is for liquidity, whether it is for the networking of the NBFCs, whether the two, public sector bank and the NBFCs, can work together so that each can give their own strength and they can synergize on that. All that is going on. So the approach of the government is not to provide yet another brick and mortar branch in a village, but to provide them with access through their mobile phones itself, using fingerprint or any other biometric, to be able to do their banking functions far more with a efficient way of using technology. Today many banks have stopped putting ATM machines. They're putting such ATM machines where the customer doesn't even have to have a PIN or number or anything. He can just put his thumb impression or his iris registration with which he can transact business. RuPay cards, a lot of today I'm aware that we are moving into Singapore. A lot of acceptability of RuPay cards are being recorded also in countries like in the neighborhood, Sri Lanka and other areas. There's even enough scope for expanding on it. That is definitely one of the soft powers of India if we can give it all the strength. I purposely pushed Article 370 to the last. It was a major step and goes to prove that the Prime Minister's conviction to fulfill some promises which have lasted for decades in BJP and also earlier in Janasangh are getting fulfilled now. It was a temporary clause. And 35A also was very temporary. In fact, 35A, if I can say, was brought in through the back door. It is not even made into a part of the amendments made to the Constitution. It is somewhere in the appendix. But what did Article 370 do all these years? It actually denied fundamental rights to many of our citizens, particularly women, particularly SCs and STs. And how did it deny? In that, even if you're born in Kashmir, if only you married somebody outside of the state, you could not have the right to inherit your own property. Similarly, Indian Constitution since 1947 has given the affirmative action of reservation in educational institutions and also reservation during recruitment for SCs and STs, because they needed that kind of affirmative action to be given. But because of Article 370, these were not available for the scheduled castes of the Jammu and Kashmir or for the Bakarwals and STs of Jammu and Kashmir. As a result, therefore, a temporary Article 370 functioned against the spirit, the letter and spirit of the Constitution itself. So by removing, you have now only brought everybody at par with the rest of the country, where the fundamental rights and also the constitutional provisions which are there to help them to climb up the social ladder and also economically prosper will now be restored. So I would think, and this is what I've been saying everywhere, if people today across the globe are talking about what happened to the human rights since past August 4th after the 370, I want to say where were they? All these years, at that time when women and SCs and STs, human rights were not even talked about. Why didn't they join in and raise a voice saying why Article 370 denies them this right? At that time we never heard any human rights being talked about, women's rights being talked about. Now it all comes up, and therefore I don't think it should deter us from speaking for what 370 had done to the state all these years, and why removing it is actually only for the benefit of all the people of that state. So in short.